Yes. So I'll start with the ecological succession itself. And let's start. We have done primary succession, we have done secondary succession. I told you what are pioneering species, what are climax species, and then I told you what is seared, SERE, which is in between the pioneering species and the climax species. So we did pioneer species, we did climax species. At the end of succession, the type of organism we get, they are climax species. The organism which start the ecological succession are pioneer species. And in between the species which we have, these are seer, SERE, these are seer. So we have pioneering species, we have seer, and we have climax species. This is what I told you. Then I told you that the ecological succession can take place on rocks because see, when we say xerac, xerach, succession, xerac basically means the succession which takes place in xeric conditions. As I told you, xeric, xeric conditions, it always means xeric. Wherever we study this word xeric, it means the desert conditions, but you must have seen that the ecological succession cannot take place in desert. The vegetation is almost nil. So ecological succession cannot take place in desert. So we do not consider xeric conditions as the succession which is taking place, xerac as the succession taking place on desert. We say on rocks, The succession which takes place on rocks, we consider it as xerac succession. Then we have mesoc, which takes place on land. Then we had another hydrarch, hydrach, which takes place on water. Okay, this is three types of succession. And I told you, if it is a xerac succession and if it is a hydrarch succession, that means a succession taking place in water, or the succession which is taking place in on rocks. All the type of successions, they progress towards the mesic succession. All the type of succession, all the type of ecological succession, they progress towards the mesic succession. If it is xerac, it will also progress toward mesic. If it is hydrarch, it will also progress towards mesic. That means a land succession. So I told you the two types of succession also. I told you that the two types of succession, not the mesic. The two types are primary succession and the secondary succession, in which I told you many differences of both. I told you that the primary succession takes a long duration because the sediment is not present, the base is not present. This takes place in soil less sterile biological, we'll say, substratum. The primary succession takes place in a soil less sterile biological substratum. That means there is no soil. First, the soil has to be formed. Formation of soil itself takes millions of years, hundreds of years. So first the basis of soil, and then on that soil, first a thin film of soil will be formed, then the bed of the soil will increase in width, and finally we will have some vegetation which will grow on it. So this type of succession, which is primary succession, because it takes place on soil less sterile biological substratum, so what happens, this takes a long duration. So after a long duration, the primary succession is possible. Whereas if we say secondary succession takes place in the areas where already we have some sort of sediment, we have already soil, some vegetative propagules which are in dormant stage, they may also be present. Some we can say spores may also be present. Some nuts in the form of, in the form of propagules, they can also be present. Some seeds may also be present. Some organic debris may also be present. Organic debris, husk or some vegetative propagules may also be present. This is already there. So see, that time which is required for the formation of soil, and formation of soil takes place millions of years, that time is deducted, that time is reduced, already some organic debris is present there, that will also help in ecological succession. Some vegetative propagules are present, that will also help in succession. So this doesn't take lot of time. Already the base is ready, just what it needs: few showers of water, that means some rain, some fertilizer type of thing, which will be provided in the form of organic debris which is present, and the life starts, and the vegetation, the life starts. So it takes little time, lesser time than the primary succession. If we say example of this is the cooled lava. What happens when volcanic eruptions takes place and the lava runs from there, flows from there, ultimately it cools down. So when it cools down, we get such a sediment, we get such a substratum where there is no soil. See, when the lava cools, it's more or less rocky. There is no substratum. There is no soil. So first the soil has to be formed, and then on that soil, the simpler form of vegetation grow, and then after that, when the simpler form of vegetation grows, it its roots go deep. Then the film of the soil broadens, and finally a higher form of plants they grew. So this is one example, cool lava. Okay, then in the secondary succession, the example is, suppose if a fire is a burnt forest, because of the forest fire, sometimes the forest they burn everything on the forest, in the forest burn. Ultimately, what is there? See what happens, how the succession takes place in that forest which is recently burnt. So what happens, the soil is already there, and because of burning, what happens, the ash, the burnt trees, the burnt grass, it forms organic debris, which is a sort of good fertilizer for the growth of new vegetation. So organic debris is present, maybe some propagules means which can give rise to new form of life, which can give rise to new plants. They may also present inside the soil. So when it rains, what happens, they get sufficient water, and they can sprout out of the soil. Okay, so this form of life, this form of secondary succession, which I have told you, I've given you the example, that the burnt forest, for after forest fires, how the succession takes place, that is a good example of secondary succession. So this is what we did on that day. So now I'll tell you some steps of ecological succession. Primary succession and secondary succession are two types of ecological succession. Now I'll tell you the various steps of ecological succession. So here, steps of ecological succession. What are the various steps of ecological succession? So let's see. The steps of ecological succession. The first step is nudation. This is clearing of the area, the clearing of the area. Okay. So clearing of the area, nudation. Then the second is invasion. Now what happens? Invasion. The second step is invasion. In invasion, what happens? The spores or the seeds, the spores. This, I'm not telling about the primary succession or secondary succession. It is for all. It is general type of steps for ecological succession. So spores or seeds, they enter that area. Spores or seeds, they enter that area where the succession has to take place. So their entry is invasion. That means a new life form, in a what we'll say, in a secret form, enters the area where the ecological succession has to take place. So this is invasion. Then comes the next is aggregation. So after the spores and the seeds, they enter, what happens? They start growing, they start developing into new plants, new life, new plants. Then after that, they undergo this process of aggregation. Aggregation means adaptation and reproduction. Adaptation and reproduction. That means whatever life form has grown in that area where ecological succession is taking place, their adaptation takes place. That means whatever spores have grown, whichever seeds have grown, what happens? They adapt to that particular environment, particular climatic condition, particular environmental condition. And we use a special word for this, and that word is acclimatization. 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 So they acclimatize themselves, they adapt themselves according to the surroundings, according to the we'll say the conditions which are there in that particular area. And when they adapt themselves, they increase in number, and for that they start reproducing. So reproduction takes place and they increase in number. Then when they, after reproduction, when they increase in number, what will happen? When they increase in number, something else is going to happen. And what is that which will happen when they increase in number? When any species increases in number, competition takes place. Competition takes place. So the next step which will take place is competition. And in this process of competition, only the fittest one will survive. Okay, if any species, any organism which is not fit enough for to survive in that condition, they will not be able to uh, survive, they will die. So this is the next thing which is going to happen, which is competition. And after competition, what happens? See, when the species increase in number, they will feed on certain plants, they will feed on some animals or plants, whatever. So what happens? A particular number of species will either increase or will decrease. Like when the human population increases, what do? They start deforestation. That means when the deforestation start, the forests are cut. So there is, because of deforestation, there is a change in the climatic condition. See, because when the human population increases, the forest has to be cut to make, industries, then to make colonies so that the people live. So what happens? The forests are cut, and that leads to the change in environmental conditions. So same way here, the competition. After aggregation, we had competition where the increased, there is competition between the species. Okay, as a result, a particular type of species may decrease in number. A particular type of species organism on which they are feeding or which they are using may decrease in number. May decrease in number because of competition. And because of this competition, then there, because if a particular type of organism or species is decreasing in number, there will be change in environment. It will lead to change in the environmental condition. Change in the environmental conditions. So the environmental conditions will change, and this change in environmental condition will finally result in the appearance of the climax community. Appearance of climax community. What is this climax community? Climax community, it has all those species which can survive properly in the prevailing environmental conditions. Like, because of the increase in human population, what happened? Deforestation. So the amount of oxygen decreased. see, the amount of oxygen is not like that what it used to be before, and the climatic conditions has also increased. It is as compared to the to many years before. So now because of that, what happened, the species which were able to in these conditions, they only, which were able to live properly in these conditions, they only survived, rest of them could not. So same thing will happen here. If a particular type of organisms, they decrease in number or they become extinct, the climatic conditions will change, the environmental conditions will change, and only those species will survive which will be able to cope up with the prevailing situation. So appearance of the climax community, that community we call as climax community. So these are the steps of ecological succession, which includes mutation, invasion, aggregation, competition, change in the environmental conditions, and appearance of climax community. Anything which needs to be told again or repeated? Yes, beta? Anything which needs to be told again or repeated? Any point? Yes, beta? Any point which needs to be repeated in the steps of ecological succession? Yes, bache? Okay, Sukhsahaj? Yes, others? Yes, beta? Where are the pioneering species in these? After this, of course, the pioneering species will come. The spores, the seeds, when they grow, they will give rise to the new form of life that will form the pioneering species, because they have started the ecological succession. The one which start the ecological succession are pioneering, and the one which remain at the end of the ecological succession, which are able to survive in the prevailing climatic conditions, prevailing environmental conditions, are climax species, because they are very adaptive. These climax species, they are very strong. They have developed such adaptations in them. They have developed such modifications in them so that they are able to survive in the prevailing environmental conditions. Okay, so these are the strongest type of organisms, climax community. Fine. Okay, Paras. Others? Yes, others, children. Suzanne, Parthvi, Gurung, Shagun, Chitra. Yes, I think it's clear. I should move on to the Zerak now. I would like to tell you something in the Zerak. Zerak now. So I move on to the next one. Yeah, Zerak species. Zerak succession. As I told you, we do not say that which is taking place in the desert, rather we consider a rock. Succession which takes place on the rocks. So if we say Zerak succession, Zerak succession. On rock. Now what happens here? First of all, if there is a rock and on that rock the succession starts taking place. First of all, what grows? What is the pioneering species? So pioneering species, in that case, what it will be? What do you think? On the rock. On the rock. Yes, on the rock. Here rock means the rock, not the rock. Fungus. Yes, fungus. Anybody else? Paras is saying fungus. Yes, anybody else? Lichens. Yes, it's hedge. Lichens. What will grow here are lichens. Lichens are the primary species. Now, out of the lichens also, we have done three forms of lichens. If you remember three forms of lichens, anybody who remembers the three types of lichens we did in 11th class, if you remember? Yes? Yes, three forms of lichen. Which one did we do? Yes, three forms of lichens. Lichens will only grow, but what are those three forms of lichens which will grow here? There are three forms of lichen. Foliose is one. Yes, Vaniti. Great. Yes, Vaniti. Foliose is one. Yeah. The three forms are crustose, foliose, and fruticose. So the first form of lichens which will grow in case of xerox succession on the rocks are crustose. First, it will be crustose because they are the ones which can grow directly, easily on a substratum, on a soil less substratum. So when they grow, what will happen that they will form a very, very, very thin film of soil. And then these will be replaced by second type of lichen, which is foliose. And then, of course, of course, still it will be very, very, very thin film of soil, but still thicker than the first one. And then the third form of lichen which will grow, that will be fruticose. And ultimately it will result in the formation of a little more thicker, I mean, we cannot say, we cannot use the word thicker here because still it is a very, very, very thin film of soil which have grown here. So the lichens, the three forms of lichens, one by one they grow, and ultimately we get a very thin film of soil. Results in the formation of a very results in the formation of a very thin film of soil. So this grows here. This is formed. That means now we cannot say that it is soil less. A thin film of soil has grown. Now, after these, the lichens they have grown, and a very, very thin film of soil has been formed. Now, what can grow on this very thin film of soil? The very short plants, very short plants, like which particular plants? Yes, Markantia, Rixia, Bryophyta. After this, what grows on this are bryophytes. Bryophyta. So the bryophyta they grow on it, which are very, which do not have roots, but they have rhizoids because still the soil layer of soil is very, very thin. So the plants cannot grow. What will grow? The roots cannot hold it because for the roots need some soil to hold. Whereas if the structure is like root but not root, it will be able to hold the very, very, very thin film of soil. So after that grows the bryophyte, and then after the bryophytes, like the mosses, mosses can grow on the rocks. You must have seen at Dalhousie, the rocks have these mosses, velvet like growth, velvet like growth is on the rocks which are bryophytes. And this is just because the bryophytes, they do not have roots, they have rhizoids, root like structures which can grow very well on very thin film of soil. Now after the bryophytes, what grows next is the pteridophyte, simpler roots, pteridophytes. Pteridophytes they grow, okay, ferns and all, ferns, Selaginella and all, they grow, which have the simpler form of roots. And after this grows, of course, the herbs, grasses, herbs, because now because of their growth, what happens? Their secretions, because of the growth and secretions, of course, the at every step, the film of soil is getting thicker and thicker. It is becoming thicker and thicker. So finally, there is sufficient soil for the growth of herbs, and these herbs are then replaced by shrubs. And finally, when the shrubs grow, the soil, the bed of the soil becomes soil layer is thick, and on these here thick for the shrubs, For the shrubs, they can grow well. And then when the shrubs grow, it becomes much thicker. And finally, what grows on it? Trees. So from the xeric succession, see again, it is progressing towards the mesic. Trees are mesic. Where do the trees grow? They grow on land. That means mesic succession, mesic type. So always see, I told you now that every succession tends to move towards the mesic. It progresses towards the mesic type. So here also, if you see the xeric type, the xerac is progressing towards the mesic type, which is trees. So all the successions, whether it is hydrarch or xerac, they progress towards the mesic type. Here I have shown you the example where the xerac is progressing towards the mesic type. What do we have ultimately? The trees. Trees are, examples of mesic land conditions. Where do they grow? On the land condition. So here they are progressing. The xerac succession is also progressing towards the mesic succession. Is it clear? Anything, any query in this? Yes, beta? Or this succession is clear, or any query in this? Okay, Sukhsahaj. Any question? Okay, Paras. Any question in this? Any question in this? Okay, Amit. No questions. Okay, fine, no question. So, beta, as I told you, I have given you this first example where the xerac succession is progressing towards a mesic succession. Okay, so same way, tomorrow I'll give you another example where I'll show how the hydrarch succession, it progresses towards a mesic succession. So here, I'll give you a little hint today. There are some diagrams given in your book. So it will be better if you sit with that, with those diagrams tomorrow. Or if you have your NCRT book right now, you can open it. If you have it, all of you have your NCRT book. There are few diagrams given in the NCRT books showing the hydrarch succession. Do you all have your NCRT books, Pita? If not, I'll show you like this. Okay, fine. Can you open your book on page number 252? 252. So one thing now, before I start with this, I want to ask you, see here, the lichen